to ping them, and across time I do think the mage needs to go for, they need to hit the bottom of their deck essentially to beat these newer priests that especially have a lot more heal built into them, but we'll get into that later because of course in Specialist we got to start with the primaries, and Glory's specific priest build is rocking the double Onyx Mage Scribe, which I believe has gotten a lot more popular this week, and I feel that this list has so much extra potential to generate more healing, and I do think it's quite good against mage.
I agree as well, and I think that Glory's primary list is pretty close to the primary list that I would bring. Like, the argument you can make in Specialist is that your primary list should be very stripped down. Like, that's what Alan's gone for. He tops out at, what is it, Shadowhunter Vol'jin is the most expensive card in his deck. There's very little value in there, and then, of course, adds it all in the secondary and tertiary decks for if he needs extra value. But here, Glory, like you said, the added health on Onyx Mage Scribe is often one of the biggest parts as well, just because it soaks up so much damage from Mask of Cthulhu later on.
And the Mage does need to generate more burst than what's originally in the deck, in my opinion, because either they can get it from the spell damage from Imprisoned Phoenix, for example, which we see Shaxy picking up right away. I honestly think that was not a snap pick because there is arguments for just taking the value from Steward of Scrolls, but something like Cram Session makes the Phoenix so much more powerful, and also just holding on to the Phoenix towards the late game gives you way more reach. But the real story here is the double flows entering the hand right on time, and then he can follow up with Refreshing Spring Water, already looking great for Shaxy.
But it's no slouch of a hand from Glory. Like, obviously, this Sethic Veilweaver did not get anything accomplished other than just baiting out a Brain Freeze, which is not insignificant. But the Onyx Mage Scribe ready to come down next turn with the coin to activate the Spell Burst if he wants to, because it will cost a mere 4 mana, thanks to the double reduction from 2 Draconic Studies. Which, I mean, that sounds to me like the perfect time to get it down. Unless they have exactly Devolving Missiles, it's very, very difficult to clear off.
That's very huge here. You can see Glory taking the time to heal for whatever little increment he can as opposed to Insight, because I think he doesn't actually want to smite the Thalnos just yet after having seen a Cram Session. Sometimes you can just strand the card draw in the Mage's hand, but this is not one of those hands. And you can see from Glory the reaction is right there, and now he will have to start putting on his counteroffensive.
That pickup did make things a little more complicated though, right? Like, how desperate are you to activate the Spell Burst effect? Because after the second Mage Scribe was picked up, I was honestly kind of looking at Mage Scribe into Coin Mage Scribe on turn 5, even if they did have the Devolving Missiles.
It's really close, right? I think that Glory's game plan here is actually not necessarily just sticking to minions, but hopefully into the card draw turn from Shaxy / Apexis Blast turn. It still doesn't necessarily kill the Mage Scribe, and then he could land an Apotheosis target plus the Insight. And I think trying to get the value from the Mage Scribe while you can is very important, because again, any additional Renew, Flash Heal, that type of thing is huge in the matchup. Shaxy gets the Devolving, but not the greatest outcome on the Mask, which means Glory gets to stick an Apo target, which even though it's not the biggest minion, I feel you take that wherever you can get it in this matchup.
Yeah, I was looking at just going for Apo heal at first glance, obviously, to try and get maximum health on it, but when you pick up Sethic for an extra card as well, these are the kind of effects that can win you the game.
Yeah, very true. For Shaxy, throwing out the first Mask, I think, was totally fine in that position, but he is now faced with a hand that really lacks card draw. He has the Phoenix that can wake up into a potential Ruined Orb turn or even a Mask turn, but this does look to me like he needs to clear the board into a Ring Toss to try and pick up Rigged Fair Game for that card draw. Cram Session, though, really helps solve his problems, because against priests lately, if you can avoid it, you don't necessarily want to play Rigged Fair Game a bit later on when they can possibly Elutia it and draw 3 cards from their own deck.
So Glory, I believe, just has full information, as this is the lone secret included in the deck. So there's no chance of it being Mirror Entity. Throw down the Mage Scribe 100% just to get another big body online. And as you're saying, now just trying to get that Phoenix set up for this double Cram Session, because with 2 Incantus Flows being played, this could be honestly kind of close to just an OTK, maybe 2-turn kill here. If he can get double Fireball, Apexis Blast, Spring Waters to refresh mana, this could get absurd.
It could be. Shaxy has played one Spring Water, but that doesn't mean that he can't keep going for the burst. But I do want to note that the Netherwind over the Phoenix last turn was a bit iffy in my opinion, because I feel like he needs the Phoenix to wake up as soon as possible and to be able to get card draw off of whatever cram sessions are still left in the deck, even if you do float a mana. He does pick up the Rig Fair game, which is very huge. Can't necessarily prevent this 2-5 from attacking face this turn, but he could get it to go off perhaps next turn after clearing the board with Mask of Cthulhu.
And whether or not it was intentional, this is just very well sequenced from Glory. I mean, you'd have to expect it is. With obviously the Mage Scribe not having the spell burst triggered, kind of forces the Devolving Missiles were it there from Shaxy, which it was. And so now he gets another Apotheosis. If the second one in his hand wasn't enough already, he can stick this at any point and just gain huge amounts of health.
Right. Well, he still has to be wary of counter spells, so I don't think this is the Apo turn. Also has to be wary of Netherwind Portal. So, I mean, he knows about that being the first secret played, and the attack phase definitely just to respect that first rigged fair game. Varden is so big here, though. That could get Shaxy to proc the rigged fair game.
Good point. Massively up in the amount of card drawn with the cram session as well. As I was saying, if you can get Spring Water to refresh your mana, like with only 11 cards left and another one being drawn from the Star Scryer as well, he can basically guarantee the entire deck being drawn next turn if he wants to.
That's right. And that's why I like this ring toss, even though there's only 3 secrets to pick from. Honestly, Barrier's the only bad one. The rest of it just makes Glory's life very problematic. He will have pretty much full information because you just never take Barrier in this situation. And so he knows that he has to play something for Counterspell and then probably end with the Devouring Plague to clear off the 4 damage on board. The thing is, Counterspell will proc and then the Netherwind Portal goes off after the next spell you play, which is very awkward.
And so, I mean, I'm just going to throw it out there. Do you have to do something on this turn? Is it so scary that this demands you to go for the counterspell and proccing the Netherwind on this turn?
You might end up leaving, I would say on average, less damage on board because he would remove 6 and then put a 4-drop in play. And yes, he does have to like pass the turn, but this board will in all likelihood remain next turn because his board's going to get blown up by any manner of brain freeze and combustions, and then he'll still have to do something the turn after. So at the very least, like spending mana to get something out of Glory's hand, I think was completely warranted, but I did not expect initiation. I kind of thought he was going to proc the CS with an Apotheosis and then go for, or Palm Reading, for example, and then go for Devouring Plague. But here we go.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm just kind of surprised that he looked surprised. What did he expect to happen when he played the initiation there with all those secrets having been picked? Like you said, Ice Barrier was the only reasonable one. But here we go. Off to the races. Another Spring Water, double Apexis Blast as well, and a Fireball. This has to be lethal, right?
Yeah, I think he is very dead.
Good friends serve their own end.
And to be fair, even if Glory had removed some of that board from Shaxy, he was very likely still just dead because the spell damage from the Phoenix into card draw for 0 mana, into refreshing more mana with the Spring Water is kind of impossible for Priest to beat. But still, I do agree with you that it's kind of weird to see Glory surprised that a CS went off because there were 5 secrets.
Yeah, and I think that, to be fair, the play he made there was kind of the same thing I was talking about of like, do you have to deal with that board right now or can you just ignore it for a turn? He was essentially just ignoring the board for a turn and just proccing the counterspell with the most cumbersome spell he had. But like you said, with 6 damage on the board, that's just another Fireball they've gained out of nowhere. So there was a lot of merit for trying to proc with the, like you said, the Devouring Plague, or sorry, finish with the Devouring Plague to heal back up and try and not die on that turn. But, I mean, obviously you at the moment are the Mage expert, but that really just feels like exactly what you are trying to do as the Mage. Instead of letting them drip heal over the game, you just burst them down over 1 turn and there is nothing they can do.
Right. Looking back on it, maybe it's a stretch to call the expression from Glory surprised. Maybe it's just exasperated because it's not just removing damage that the Devouring Plague does. It also gives Shaxy a draw. off of the Star Strider. And maybe Glory was thinking the situation was bad enough that he had to hope that there was 0 draw from Shaxy's hand. And he was just setting up for a potential Cram Session top deck, which wasn't always there. But it so happened that Shaxy had the exact setup, like he said, the absolute nuts. The Encounter Slow didn't come down on 2, but they came down together on turn 4, and they discounted the card draw, which makes the like infinite, basically, mana from the Phoenix turn possible and just very difficult for Priest to overcome.
Well, here it is. Specialist is best of 3 once again. So if Shaxy is able to take the win here, that's it. The game, the series is over, and he will go through to the quarterfinals. And they are both sticking on their primary lists here. And, I mean, Shaxy, he's got the goods already, right? This is looking very strong.
Right? Which means I'm just kind of confused about what the tertiary for Shaxy is for, if not...
Right.
But, you know, maybe he was just trying to bait Glory a little bit, like we saw some of that mind game strategy from Bank Yugi. But in any case, Glory is going to start with his first studies, takes the Plague Proto Trick, which we have established is a very good card in the Priest Mirror, but not really what you want against Mage, really slow, gets devolved quite quickly.
Definitely feels like a coin Incantus Flow hand. This is one of the things I've kind of been trying to get a feel for as I play Mage more, because, you know, I'm told if you have a 1-drop, play that and then Incantus Flow, but I do feel like there's a little bit more to it than that. But with no card draw to coin into, no Apexis Blast to coin into, sure, just get all the discounts you can.
Right. I do agree, because it looked like Shaxy was going to go for Cram Session post this turn, but because he's picked up the Primordial Studies, that lets him get additional draw from the Cram Session next turn, and it's totally worth delaying 1 more turn, because card draw is very, very important to Mage in this matchup, especially if you can potentially avoid having to rely on rigged fair game for it because of the Elucia check. Then you can basically give the Priest very little counterplay. And these options for Glory are very, very bad. Power Word Fortitude, the only one that looks like it could get played in the near future.
Yeah, Fortitude I think is reasonable. If he had a card that, or a minion, sorry, that could come down next turn, I think it would be a lot more palatable. But it does mean that he can just buff up his One Maker because it's not actually going to die this turn. It's a reasonable enough spending of your mana, I think.
That's fair. I mean, he did pick up an additional spell, so he gets to weave in the heal here, which I think is very important, because if the Wand Maker is left around the 5 health breakpoint, a discounted Apexis Blast makes the decision for Shaxy very easy. Doesn't get it here, but this is a real decision point now, because he could take the Lab Partner and continue cycling right away, but we saw the power of Phoenix last game. It is just a matter of whether Shaxy thinks it's worth spending this mana on ring tosses that aren't corrupted, and I don't think it's worth it, so I agree that he's taking the immediate card draw.
Yeah, exactly. Especially as he, you know, if he exactly rigged fair game, I suppose it might be good enough. But like you say, you want to start just cycling through, find some actual minion pressure, I think, at this point. Because the point you made at the start of the series, I think, was very, very valid. And it's kind of at the heart of this matchup, is that the burn isn't really there for this deck. Unless you get it all at once and they have no chance to heal, they will out-heal most of your burn. So you need to find some minion attacks, or obviously that absurd burst turn, which generally does not happen.
And for Shaxy, this is a very easy devolving once again. He probably still just removes the Eyesore because it's still a potential Apotheosis target, and yeah, I do think he wants to go for Mask next turn in order to corrupt the secrets, and so removing as much minion damage from the board this turn makes sense to me.
That's just a straight up spider tank. Glory got the same minion twice in a row.
It is a very creepy looking spider tank, but you might even say it's an eyesore. But just combustion or brain freeze ping is the question here. In fact, he could even just play one of the ring tosses. Okay, I don't actually hate this because he has 2 in hand.
Yeah, you can always
Doesn't
deal with
hit
the Eyesore
good one, though.
next turn as well.
And we've talked about actually how good Mirror Entity can be in this matchup against Priest, especially this list that's running the double Mage Scribes. You see from Glory that he kind of gets to test 2 for 1 by starting with a spell. If it's Netherwind or CS, then he goes from there. And if it's not one of those, then the Wand Maker is not too bad of a minion to give into Mirror Entity.
It's a pretty good minion for him, though, just something that can be condemned away to stop any damage, but that makes things a little trickier. You really, really want to get that down on this turn.
But it's potential 5 to face. It's really close, right? Because even if you have seen a devolving missiles, sometimes the Mage Scribe just gets frozen for a turn, and then it's swept up by a Flame Strike the next turn or a Combustion. I think that overall, I agree with Glory delaying a little bit here just to make sure that Shaxy doesn't get any additional damage compared to just what's the burn in his deck.
Interesting second use of the Raise Dead there, though. I guess essentially to guarantee him no eyesore. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's worth it.
Yeah, I guess. Like he obviously had the chance to get double one maker, sorry, but if you get eyesore at all, it's literally just clogging up your hand, and that can become an issue in Priest, so fair enough.
Ooh, good minion for Shaxy here. Just high health, not a target for Hysteria, not a target for a generated Soul Mirror, that type of thing. And it's just a question of whether he wants to combust this turn, and because next turn is looking like Mask, I do think it makes sense. Remove as much health from Glory's board as possible, clear the runway to send as much of this burn to the face. Shaxy needs a bit more card draw, but the ring toss hopefully gets him there from his perspective.
So how is Glory even going about this? You can obviously clear with Hysteria on this turn, but he's just determining it's not even worth it here and just wants to get the spells and some health on board, but it's just more damage he has to tank.
Right. I was wondering if he would potentially use the 0 mana renew and then between that discover and whatever comes off the Mage Scribe, try and hit something to go along with the smite to get rid of the Greybow, but now that I think about it, it has to be exactly the other smite. So he is just going to go for minion presence. This is still, in a way, trying his best to mitigate the mask damage, and it kind of does to an extent. This is not a good mask turn for Shaxy, so setting up a potential rigged fair game here.
Yeah, definitely what you're looking for. With the Brain Freeze, you can freeze anything that can attack. But for Glory here, he may have a little trick up his sleeve, as there are 3 minions on board. If you attack the Greybow into the Wand Maker would be the safest way to try and make sure that Rigged Fair Game procs, and I would definitely look heavily at that. But then maybe it's Eyesore that comes to the rescue here with that Power Word Feast to deny the Rigged Fair Game would be a huge deal.
And if all else fails, he kind of has Shadow Form Ping to deny Rigged Fair Game, which does obviously give up his natural hero power, which is very useful in the matchup, but it's not more useful than deleting 3 cards in the Mage's hand. So for Shaxy here, it's a question of Fireball Face or Ping Minion. It's honestly very close because he is living in a world where the Rigged Fair Game has to go off this turn. And if it does go off, I think he'll want to have that mana spent so he can just continue drawing with whatever comes off of that.
Fair enough, fair enough.
So first things first, test with Renew, I believe, on his face. Okay, he can test Smite, sure, if he values the healing even more than the damage, which is very fine, I think, because he has still Hysteria even if the damage doesn't go through.
Yeah, exactly. You've got Hysteria. I mean, he even had technically like Power Word Feast on the opposing minion and Shadow Word Ruin just to guarantee a way to get through an attack with the Wand Maker, but that doesn't even feel necessary at this point.
So now it's Feast his guy, and oh, he's still gonna do the thing.
He is doing it. Okay.
Okay. So this does let him go through with the Wand Maker and not have to use the Shadow Form in order to deny the Rigged Fair Game, which is huge.
It also keeps maximum health on board, so the potential for a Mask of Cthulhu, which quite clearly Shaxy was not heavily representing, but could have had, given that he wasn't playing anything more powerful than Fireball Face on that turn.
Eric, this Alex Straza, that closes out the game. Even if it were just a single flash heal, I think Shaxy was in a bad enough spot. But the Alex on top of that means that Shaxy has almost no hope to get through. But can the Ruined Orb give him some sort of freeze to proc the Rigged Fair Game? I mean, he cannot even afford to consider shadow form at this point.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I'm wondering is, did Glory actually know whether that was or wasn't Mirror Entity at that point? Because I don't think he played a minion on the previous turn, which could have maybe been a little bit scary.
That's true, but this is one of those spots where I think you can make the assumption that one has got to be rigged fair game because Shaxy just had that little card draw. The other one, to be fair, I guess it was kind of a risk, but the alternative for Glory was floating a bunch of mana.
Yeah. Well, either way, like you said, it's looking more and more like the beginning of the end. A garbage 7 drop, as often happens these days, off of the Auspicious Spirits. And even with one of the best spells that you can discover in the Deep Freeze here, 6 extra damage to face that I didn't think would be coming. It's still looking tough for Shaxy. Tough, but not quite over yet.
I think this is a potential Flame Strike comeback, and because I don't think you start with Mask against this shape of board, he, in my opinion, really needs Flame Strike. You probably start with Ping and then Refreshing Spring Water. I don't know where the Ping goes, but we shall see what comes off the Spring Water. Ruined Orb costing 0 is pretty big. Font can get Varden. Oh, it did get Varden! And the Raz as well for just continuous damage.
Varden Raz is sick. Apexis plus more Spring Waters.
More Spring Water? Oh, man. Okay, so this is one of those spots where you think you don't necessarily need to Spring Water because this turn is good enough. But at this point, I think Shaxy might be thinking about Illusia. What does that do to him? And sometimes you do just spend the Spring Water in those situations.
Oh, he's going Conjure instead of Raz, okay. Ruined Orb is more damage, though.
Oh yeah, every piece of burst you can pick up, you absolutely take. The Raz is, the Varden, they are absolutely soloing Glory right now.
So there's a couple of huge pickups, though, obviously with Zyrella in hand. We're looking for Flash Heal, we're looking for Desperate Prayer to be able to obliterate this board and keep his health total tipped up as well. Huge.
Wait, he still needs a Hero Power face to get rid of the Water Elementals, right?
It healed his opponent, it does 10.
Oh, right, sorry, yeah, the Desperate Prayer. Of course, Shaxy has also taken damage. And now, the Shadow form to check the rigged fair game.
So sick. So sick.
Okay, this is still doable for Flame Strike, I believe. The order for Shaxy is probably Ruined Orb face first, because sometimes he can just pick up Lethal with the Refreshing Spring Water, potentially.
Is it not a Pexis in case you get Mozaki? Is that a thing?
Yeah, that's also a thing, you're right.
It's niche, but, you know, he's losing the game.
Yeah, fair. That is the opposite of Mozaki. Okay.
That is a literal car crash.
Flame Strike, okay. Okay, I think he's deviating now from the Ruined Orb phase. It goes on the Alexstrasza with a Ping and the Flame Strike, and that's a full clear. And that means Glory is not out of the woods.
Another
my
Apexis!
Goodness.
Is Shaxy just winning still after everything that Glory's accomplished this game?
It feels like it. He's just picked up burn after burn from from Ruined Orbs, but I was saying Illusia because I feel like that's Glory's house right now. He doesn't even have his original hero power anymore. Gets a little tiny bit of healing from the Onyx Mage guy, but that is far too slow. Needs to fit in the Ping to deny the last 3 cards in Shaxy's deck, which are Font, Ruined, and AI. Is even more burn that's left.
I mean, Glory is the king of getting 4 health 3 drops. That is at least true. But it still just feels like it's going to be too much coming in now.
Yep. I think it's fine for Shaxy to fit in the Ping because his Ruined Orb, which is the only piece of burst left in the deck, costs 0, and the AI costs 1, which is still all playable with Fireball, Apexis Blast next turn. So he's just maximizing the amount of damage he can get without putting a minion on board, which is to deny potential Samuro Apotheosis from Glory.
So to even survive, obviously Glory does not expect another Apexis Blast here, right? But to survive, he would have to go Raise Dead, Mage Scribe, Nova, Desperate Prayer just to be alive. And that is not going to be enough, though.
Yeah. Well, 11 plus... Okay, that's lethal.
Oh my god. Yeah,
I mean, 2 out of 3 draws from Shaxy's deck were lethal there. AI and the Rune Orb, because the AI would get the Rune Orb. It was only Font off the top. And sometimes that's lethal too, if he gets spell damage. So for Shaxy, the Giga Pop-Off happens, and we have seen mage things, Derek.
We have indeed. Big win there for Shaxy. Very, very well done as well. In that second game, you could tell he was definitely starting to doubt himself when he just had to go for the Mask of Cthulhu against a very healthy board where he lost a lot of burn damage. You definitely expect to be losing there. But with, oh my god, just the perfect discoveries one after the other with Varden, the Ethereal Conjurer that got him Rune Orb, that got him Apexis Blast. Like, you couldn't have sequenced it better if you were, if you were able to stack the cards in your order. But very well done from Shaxy. And while I think there were few decisions from Glory that could have changed things, I do think most of the ones he made were pretty much on the money there that game.
I agree. Even down to taking the Raise Dead for just a single one maker, I believe, just to deny the Eyesore. There's often not even that much time to play Mage Scribe into Mage Scribe into Mage Scribe in the matchup. And one maker also has a decent chance of giving you either Renew or Flash Heal, which are both very good in the matchup. It had to be pretty fortunate outcomes from Shaxy. I did talk about how Flame Strike is good in the matchup, but if it had not come post Varden, he might have already been dead. So Glory gave it the best shot he could, but this is why you bring Mage sometimes. And Shaxy not switching onto the Tertiary, probably just a mind game, sure.
Yeah, imagine, like, the Flame Strike was the best card for him there, just to be able to clear the board. Imagine if he'd drawn Wildfire there instead. He would have just been dead on the spot. So well done, Shaxy. He's going to be going through to the quarterfinals to play out tomorrow. It's kind of emblematic for Glory here, where it's another decent week here in